There were things that I was successful at, but long-term relationships were not one of them. And I felt that it was really not my destiny to have a long-term relationship. Sure, they called me a traitor, but no one ever asked who he really was. At 75, Victoria Principal, the former beauty icon of Dallas, sat before the camera for the first time in nearly 20 years of silence. Gone was the calm, composed gaze people remembered. She looked straight into the lens and said the one thing Hollywood never wanted to hear. I was married to a man who never loved women. That single sentence was the spark that ignited a storm of truth. For 2 decades, the tabloids only talked about her alleged affair, the night the police showed up in Beverly Hills, and the divorce that cost her over $50 million. But no one had ever asked what really happened. Behind those villa doors, Victoria had lived half her life in silence to protect the reputation of the man who once called her his wife. But now she chose freedom, not through tears, but through truth. If you think you know this story, think again. Step inside a journey that tears down the facade, from lies written on surgical invoices to silences bought with millions of dollars. Because sometimes to live truthfully, you must destroy the role the world once adored. They said I betrayed him, but no one asked who he really was. At 75, Victoria Principal no longer cared for fame or gossip. She once said softly but clearly, "I stayed silent for too long, not out of fear, but because some truths were too heavy to bring into the light." Then she spoke of her marriage that lasted more than 20 years. What she called the hardest role I ever played because it had no script. When Victoria married Dr. Harry Glassman in 1985, Hollywood nodded in approval. They're beautiful, intelligent, successful. A Beverly Hills fairy tale. Harry was a cosmetic surgeon to A-list stars, politicians and top executives. Victoria, who had just left Dallas, was a symbol of strength, grace, and mystery. Together, they appeared at grand galas and elite dinners, the picture of stability amid Hollywood's chaos. But the truth was they stopped sharing a bed only a few years after their wedding. Victoria said that by their 2nd year she sensed something was wrong. Harry never touched her, not the way a husband touches a wife. At first, she thought he was tired or overworked, but that feeling never left. It only grew colder. One night in late 2001, Victoria received an anonymous call. A man's voice said briefly, "If you want to know who your husband really is, go to the underground parking lot of the Chateau Marmont 1100 p.m. tonight." She waited in her car for 40 minutes, her hands trembling. At 10:57, a silver BMW stopped. Harry stepped out, not alone. Beside him was a young man familiar somehow. When they moved closer, Victoria realized it was Brandon Kay, a fitness model who had appeared in fragrance campaigns for a company whose CEO Harry worked with. She could never forget that image. Harry and Brandon walking into the hotel elevator. Brandon smiling, his hand brushing her husband's waist. I didn't want to believe what I saw. I thought maybe they were just friends. Maybe I misunderstood. I wanted to believe in the good. The next day, Victoria asked quietly, her voice trembling. Harry frowned inside and sighed, annoyed. He's a patient. I was consulting him after hours. You should trust me. She wanted to believe him. But something inside her broke. Weeks later, Victoria met Brandon at his gym. The conversation was brief. He didn't confirm anything, but his calm, knowing look told her everything. That night, she left Harry a note. You don't have to love me, but don't use me as a shadow to hide who you are. She expected silence. Instead, Harry struck back. A week later, a tabloid ran a headline. Victoria Principal caught getting too close with male co-star. Attached was a blurry photo of her and a young actor sitting in a car after a script reading. The story spread fast. Paparazzi swarmed her house, shouting, "Did you cheat on your husband? Are you having an affair?" Victoria stood still. She understood. He built a show to punish me for touching his secret. Years later, she said only one line. All my life, I was taught women must stay loyal. But no one taught me what to do when the man you marry isn't loyal to himself. That was the day she realized she wasn't a wife. She was an unwilling accomplice in a performance built to protect someone else's image. And the price was her own dignity. Victoria stayed silent for years. She didn't sue, didn't correct the tabloids, didn't speak a word until she turned 75, when every other role had ended. All she had left was the truth. I don't speak to hurt anyone. I speak so I can finally live. Some truths don't arrive all at once. They seep in slowly, detail by detail, like drops of water falling on the same crack until it finally breaks open. After discovering the truth about Harry Glassman's orientation, Victoria didn't leave right away, partly because silence had become her habit, and partly because she still hoped to preserve something, if not love, then at least respect. But the longer she stayed, the clearer it became this marriage wasn't just an emotional trap. It was a single link in a world she was never truly a part of. 2. I didn't marry a man. I married an empire of deceit. Harry wasn't just a surgeon. He was a gatekeeper to a shadow network of favor-coded smiles and services wrapped in absolute discretion. His clients weren't simply people wanting facelifts or nose jobs. They were politicians, CEOs, and aging stars seeking to erase time and mistakes alike. At first, Victoria thought he was simply talented and trusted. But then came the dinners with no invitations, the whispered phrases that sounded like codes. I need a document adjustment. Can you protect the image if something leaks? When she asked, Harry replied casually, that's just how Hollywood works. Don't ask. Gradually, she saw that the adjustments weren't just on faces. They were on headlines, records, and truths. Some stars were manufactured. Others cleaned of scandals overnight. And she realized she herself had become an accessory. At events, she wasn't Victoria Principal, the strong woman America admired, but simply Mrs. Glassman, the elegant proof of his respectability. They stopped calling me by my name. I became a fashionable accessory. At one secret dinner in Holby Hills, where phones were confiscated and cameras banned, Victoria overheard Harry and a media mogul laughing. If she threatens to leak photos, I can seal her mouth with 2 injections and an NDA. Send her to me. I've got people in the newsroom. We can make her look unstable in 3 days. They laughed. Victoria froze. That was the moment I realized I wasn't beside my husband anymore. I was surrounded by illusions where morals weren't invited. She withdrew, avoided parties, stopped appearing with him. Magazines mocked her as aged retired, a former star turned housewife. No one knew she was trying to escape a world built on silence and manipulation. Once she saw a file on Harry's desk, a media plan to restore the image of an actor accused of misconduct. The document detailed a 6-month operation cosmetic rejuvenation, a fake relationship with a famous actress, a media victim campaign, and a charity drive funded by another client. Victoria sighed. I lived in a world where beauty could be bought, and truth was always for sale. It wasn't just a line. It was the bitter conclusion of a woman who once believed she had entered a marriage, only to realize she had stepped into a gilded web of lies. When she left, she didn't just leave a man. She walked out of an entire system. The price was nearly 20 years of silence, while the world believed she was the unfaithful one who gave up a perfect life. But truth, as she said, doesn't need belief to exist. They can buy headlines, build images, even rent a fake life. But the one thing they can't do is live it for me. 3. That night, the police came because something broke. But it wasn't furniture, it was endurance. Not everyone knows what it feels like when a house grows colder, even as the fireplace still burns. Victoria knew. She had lived in such a house for years. A white 2-story villa in Beverly Hills with curved wooden porches, bougainvillea cascading from the second-floor balcony, and a marble fireplace glowing every evening. But warmth doesn't come from architecture. It comes from whispers, from the touch of hands, from glances shared across the dinner table. When those disappear, no matter how beautiful the house is, it becomes nothing more than a well-decorated prison. After the scandal of the alleged affair, one she knew had been orchestrated by her own husband, Victoria drifted between betrayal and the inability to be angry. Harry never apologized, never explained. He behaved as though nothing had happened. Each morning he still brewed French coffee, pouring it into the amber cup Victoria always used. He still left for work on time, came home on time, occasionally asking, "How's your skincare line going?" Polite, cold, and empty. And Victoria, the woman who once captivated millions through the screen, now sat alone by the dining room window, staring at an empty white soup bowl, wondering what role she was still playing in her own life. It was a Saturday night in March 2002. Light rain had begun in the afternoon, soaking the backyard and whispering through the eucalyptus trees. Victoria sat in her downstairs library reading drafts for a new skin care campaign, in a room panelled in mahogany lined with shelves to the ceiling bathed in the soft glow of a golden lamp. Harry came home later than usual. She didn't ask, but when he entered the scent of red wine and a strange cologne, not his usual, Tom Four made her pause. "Where were you?" she asked. "Client dinner? My assistant emailed you," he replied, tossing his jacket onto a chair and walking into the living room. Victoria stood following, not from jealousy, but from exhaustion, needing an answer to the growing emptiness inside. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice low, not angry, just tired. Harry turned smirking. "Funny question after what people have said about you. I know who started that rumor. Do you have proof?" The empty crystal glass slipped from her trembling hand and shattered. No one touched it. It just broke like a wake-up call, and everything spilled out. Their voices weren't loud, but the air itself trembled thick and electric like words sharpened from too many years of silence. "You never loved me. You only needed me to keep your image clean. And you live in my house. Enjoy my name and think you're the victim. I'm the victim because I was never allowed to be myself. You've always been a great actress. Victoria, now you're playing the tragic wife." Then came silence. Heavy, sharp, suffocating silence. A phone rang. A neighbor had called the police. When the blue and red lights flickered outside, Victoria sat on a grey velvet armchair, gripping an untouched glass of wine, staring into the dying embers of the fireplace. Harry stood in the corner, shirt unbuttoned, tied loose, not angry, just hollow. As if even he didn't know how they had reached this point. 3 officers entered. One spoke quietly. "We received a call." Sounds of breaking glass raised voices. Harry was led outside, not in handcuffs. But the image burned into Victoria's mind. The man once respected by Beverly Hills, stepping out of his own home like a nameless offender. "I still remember those flashing lights. They didn't just light up the house. They exposed the truth. Love was dead." The next morning, he came back. No words. The house was silent again, but it was the silence of an ending. Victoria packed her things quietly. That night, she stayed at a small hotel near Santa Monica Beach. For the first time in 20 years, she slept without the shadow of the man beside her. She didn't cry. "I didn't leave because of one blow. I left because of 1,000 invisible wounds." That night, the police came because something broke. But it wasn't furniture. It was endurance. And when a woman like Victoria stands up and walks away, she doesn't just escape a marriage. She frees herself from her final role, the perfect wife, to a man who was never real. 4. When marriage turns into negotiation, I know I've lost everything. A breakup can end in silence or in the thunder of threats. For Victoria Principal, it was no longer a simple divorce. It was a final battle to protect her dignity, preserve her identity, and reclaim the last piece of truth she owned. After that night, when the police knocked on the Beverly Hills villa in 2002, Victoria never returned there as a wife. Over the next 3 years, she all but vanished from Hollywood. No more red carpets. No more dazzling interviews. She lived like a shadow, avoiding the media, cutting ties with the elite. focusing only on rebuilding her skincare brand. But silence did not mean peace. It was a suffocating void where memories whispered in the dark and the echoes of threat never stopped. In 2005, the divorce papers were officially filed in Los Angeles County Court. On them, Victoria wrote just one short line, "Irreconcilable differences." But in her private journal, she left a note for her lawyer. "I no longer ask for justice. I only want to breathe in a room without lies." However, Harry Glassman wasn't going to let her leave so easily. As one of Hollywood's most prominent cosmetic surgeons, he possessed not only wealth, but power built from costly secrets, nose jobs, facelifts, Botox invoices, and post-surgery photos that stars dreaded being exposed. And Victoria, the face of natural beauty in Hollywood, was no exception. One evening in late May, while Victoria was reviewing documents alone in her office, the phone rang. It was Harry. His voice was cold, polite, almost rehearsed. "We both want this to end well, Vic. But everything has its price." Victoria said nothing. "I have a file. You know what's in it? Photos, receipts, post-op notes. You want to keep your image clean, don't you? Just sign it. Give up your shares in the skincare company and the house in Santa Barbara. Otherwise, the editors at page 6 will have an interesting gift." Victoria later told her lawyer she hung up immediately, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking for hours afterward. Not out of fear, but from disgust. The man who once shared her bed was now holding her hostage with her own reputation. Days later, tabloids began to whisper, "Victoria Principal. Was her beauty ever real?" An anonymous source claimed Harry had sent a book proposal to 2 New York publishers, and expose on Hollywood's cosmetic secrets with Victoria as the opening chapter. It described her as a woman so obsessed with perfection, she altered nearly every feature of her face with age. Victoria said nothing, but insiders reported that she quickly restructured her finances, moved assets into a trust, and instructed her lawyers to prepare for negotiation. During one tense meeting, a former assistant witnessed her cry for the first time since it all began. "I lived right. And still he's trying to drag me down with him." A leaked draft of the settlement revealed that Victoria agreed to forfeit over $50 million, including her shares in the skincare company she co-founded and ownership of the $12 million Santa Barbara villa. Public reaction split in two. Some called her weak, easily bought, while others praised her as the woman brave enough to trade fortune for dignity. When a reporter asked at a skincare launch event, "Do you regret losing half your fortune?" Victoria smiled, calm and unwavering. "I'd rather lose money than lose self-respect. Some things can't be bought, like the silence I paid too high a price to keep." That line spread across the media, printed on magazine covers, quoted in essays about women's empowerment, even printed on T-shirts as a slogan for a new generation of Hollywood women reclaiming their voices. Meanwhile, Harry Glassman quietly withdrew from public view. Though he never admitted anything, journalists discovered that his legal team had sent threatening letters to several outlets, but never requested any corrections. A veteran reporter remarked, "People demand corrections when the story is false. When it's too close to the truth, they stay silent." In Beverly Hills, whispers said Victoria had been forced to choose between being completely exposed or walking away with her dignity intact. A close friend recalled that on the day she signed the final papers, Victoria said softly, "Not everyone deserves a share in your story. Some people you have to leave outside and close the door." And she did quietly, without hatred, just one steady step away. A woman who left the spotlight not because she was broken, but because she was finally strong enough to say enough. 5. I spent half my life being admired, and the other half learning to be at peace. When the final door closed after her stormy divorce, Victoria Principal didn't rush to open a new one. She didn't look for another man, didn't plan a comeback to the screen, and didn't try to explain herself to the media. Instead, She did something very few women in Hollywood have ever dared to do. She disappeared to live truthfully. She left Beverly Hills behind. No more galas, no more paparazzi flashes, no more auditions. Victoria bought an 80-acre ranch in California, surrounded only by trees, animals, and wind. It was there that she began growing the ingredients for her skincare line, a brand built on one simple philosophy: healing through truth. Once a journalist came all the way to her ranch to ask why she had completely turned her back on Hollywood. Victoria simply replied, "I once lived to be seen. Now I live to understand myself." Rumors spread that she had given up on men, that the wounds ran too deep, that she had closed her heart for good. Some even claimed she had said she no longer believed in love. But in a rare 2012 interview, she gently denied it. "I didn't give up on men. I just gave up sacrificing myself to keep them." Her life slowly became a new kind of symbol. Not the glamorous icon of the silver screen, but a portrait of a woman who had fallen and then learned to rise again on her own. She wrote books, not scandalous memoirs, but guides to self-care, inner beauty, and nurturing peace of mind. Her pages didn't recount drama, they told of how a woman learned to forgive others, and most importantly, herself. Victoria also turned down numerous offers to return to reality TV, from The Real Housewives to nostalgic reunion shows. She said, "The best memories are the ones we choose to keep, not the ones others exploit." For the next 15 years, she lived almost in seclusion. Each year, she appeared only once or twice to support animal rights or environmental causes. No scandals, no public relationships, no old co-stars. Just the occasional local photo of a silver-haired woman in a plain shirt tending her garden or holding an old dog in her arms. In a short video for a forest conservation campaign, Victoria stood in a field of lavender holding a book. She smiled, her eyes free of all the shadows of fame, and said, "I once tried to be everyone's ideal. Now I just want to be the calmest version of myself." Perhaps in a world where women are judged by their looks, obedience, and fame, Victoria Principal's disappearance was the most powerful act of rebellion. No manifesto, no revenge, no destruction of her old image. Just one quiet step away and the courage to keep the truth alive in her heart. "I don't need love to exist. I need the truth to live." Over time, that sentence stopped sounding like an excuse and became her legacy. Victoria Principal was once the symbol of perfection. But it was only when she dared to shed it all and live authentically that she truly became a legend. This story isn't just about a divorce. It's a declaration from a woman who chose truth over fame, peace over glittering illusions. If you find Victoria's journey inspiring, tap the heart. Share this story with those still torn between what's right and what's expected. And don't forget to follow this channel to uncover more untold truths behind Hollywood's greatest legends. In this world, not everyone lives honestly,